Institute for Political Economy and also former Assistant Secretary to the Treasury under the Reagan administration. A phrase we often hear these days is that the middle class is shrinking. We do know that the average family income is lower than it was back in 1995. So our very own Bianca Vicini first asked Paul Craig Roberts about the cause behind that and whether there's a solution ahead. Here's what he had to say.
It's happening for a number of reasons. The one I've stressed for more than a decade is the offshoring of jobs. First, it was the offshoring of the manufacturing jobs, because if an American manufacturer moves his production offshore, his labor costs drop dramatically. And so the profits go up, and so the bonuses, the executive bonuses for management rise. The stock price rises, so the capital gains for shareholders go up. Wall Street's happy, shareholders are happy, executives are happy. And so this is what economic policy has been serving, this handful that, we call them the 1%. And this is at the expense of the careers of people, the job opportunities, the state and local tax base. Many of the cities now have extreme budget problems. They don't have a Federal Reserve to print money for them. States can't print money. So this has been a huge blow. And then it was followed by moving offshore professional service jobs like software engineering, information technology, now research, design. These types of things tend to follow manufacturing. If you don't manufacture, you have a hard time doing research and design because you don't know what's going on. And even innovation. So what we have now is we have all these college graduates with heavy student debt, student loan debt. And the recent report, I think it was from the Federal Reserve, I wrote about it recently, 50% of 25-year-old young Americans are back home living with their parents. 50%.
Speaking of offshoring, in a recent article you said that the U.S. is on course to descend into third world status, which is a pretty bold statement. I know you just touched upon offshoring, but you place in that article most of the blame on that. So is that where the problem really started?
It originated with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Because when the Soviet Union collapsed, the world kind of came to the conclusion that only American capitalism worked. So India, which had been socialist and had kept more or less its borders closed to foreign capital, and of course Communist China, they had a change of mind and made available their large underutilized labor forces. So Wall Street began putting pressure on American corporations to offshore. They said, look, we want more profits out of you. You can get more profits by moving your operations to India and China. And if you don't move, we're going to finance takeovers of your companies. So in other words, Wall Street blackmailed the American corporations. And some of them didn't want to go. They were patriotic and didn't want to desert their communities and thought it was not right to desert your workforce. Not all of them thought that, but some did. And some resisted, and so they were simply told, you go or we take you over. And then they got pressure as well from these big box stores like Walmart. Meet the Chinese price would be the order they would give to their suppliers. And of course, the only way you could meet the Chinese price was to operate in China, to offshore your own operations.
I read that article that you wrote shortly before I saw a new study that was released. I believe I shared it with you, about how the death rates for white middle-aged Americans are increasing at record rates compared to their counterparts in other industrialized nations like France or Germany. And a lot of these death rates are the result of addiction or poor health. But that poor health, whether it's physical or mental, is linked to slow economic recovery. So do you think this ties into your whole idea about offshoring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, the job opportunities are shrinking, and as you rightly noted, the real income, the real median family income, have been declining for years. It's much less in real terms than it used to be. So this forces people into cheaper foods, processed foods, lots of fat. They're depressed about their situation. They're depressed about the inability to keep their homes, or they make their car payments, or whatever. And so they seek an outlet in drugs or alcohol. It's normal. People find themselves stressed to look for relief, and that's what alcohol and drugs do. They relieve stress. And so they can't afford to buy the organic foods. If you look at the prices of the kind of food that's good for you, you really have to be well heeled. I mean, you try living an organic diet if you don't have a good income or a lot of savings to draw down. You can't do it. So they eat junk full of poisons and pesticides and glyphosate and everything else.
GOP candidates love to compare themselves to Ronald Reagan, whether it's their ideas or themselves, whether they're talking about what they would do in Syria or with healthcare or the economy. You worked in his administration, so are any of the current GOP candidates even close to Ronald Reagan at all?
No, of course not. They claim this because he was popular. He was the last president who could draw votes from both parties. Essentially he was elected by blue-collar Democrats. And he was popular, and he spoke well, gave people confidence, and he had two big successes. He ended the Cold War. Despite the opposition of the CIA and the military security complex, he stood up to them. I know about that. I was part of that. And he stopped the stagflation, which had destroyed Jimmy Carter's presidency. I know about that because I had a central role in that. So he actually did two things. And to achieve those, we had to fight.
Okay, time for a quick break. Stick around because when we return, Danielle DiMartino